couple of seconds. Okay. All right, good evening, everyone. We'll call the Standing Committee of April 20th, 2020 to order. It's 7:01. Adoption of the agenda. Administration, anything to add?
No, there isn't, Deputy Mayor.
Council? I see some shaking heads. I will note that Mayor Poole is in a teleconference right now, and he will be joining us later once it finishes up. So I will add confidential 13.1, section 17. And then the motion. Councillor Hoover.
I'll move that we adopt the agenda as amended.
Any debate on the motion? All those in favor? I see it carried unanimously. So delegation, tonight we have from Wolf Creek Schools, Superintendent Jason Lowell, Board Trustee Brent Buchanan, and Acting Secretary Treasurer Roger Hall. Who's coming on up?
Good evening. I just want to start by thanking you for an opportunity to meet with you this evening and bring greetings from the Board of Trustees. Certainly have some good news to share with you, some updates on a project that has started recently around the new grade 9 to 12 high school here in Blackfalds. And it goes without saying that it's a long time coming, so I won't belabor that point. But I think in coming here, the spirit of coming here tonight is just really to give you a first-hand update of the project and just to get a sense of where it's heading, some of the timelines, and also give you a full opportunity to ask any questions. So my preference is, if it's amenable to the board, or to council, sorry, is for you to ask questions as I'm going through. If you have any questions, please let me know. I can certainly stop and provide answers. And if I can't answer it tonight, then I've brought my staff. Roger Hall is here. Roger's been with this project right from inception as well. And Trustee Buchanan is also very familiar with the project as we've moved it forward. So without further ado, I'll move right into the presentation. So some background for you, and I apologize because some of this maybe is familiar to council, but I'll just repeat it, that we were very grateful when the October budget came out from Alberta Education to receive funding for design of the new high school. And that was great news because, as you know, over many years we've had this project as a priority in Wolf Creek Public Schools. I know you as a council and certainly as a community here in Blackfalds, you've had a strong desire for a high school, so it was long overdue. But at that time, we also were anticipating not just funding for design, but funding for construction. And those are two different pieces in this journey that we were optimistically looking forward to. So as it turned out, when the budget was released in February, at the end of February, we were fortunate to receive funding for construction. So when that news came out, the information that came to us indicated that this project was one of 5 projects in the province that are part of a bundle of P3s for high schools. So this is the first time government has ever tried to bundle 5 similar projects in the province and march them through right from the very beginning phase all the way through to completion. So the timeline around these 5 high schools is very much aligned. So the lead architect was named, and that was Workin Garrett Partnership, which is based out of Edmonton. And at our first design meeting, we received the project schedule, and I've stated here, each of these particular projects you can click on and you can see pictures and a little bit of information about the design features of the schools. I just listed on the left-hand side some of the projects that are maybe noteworthy that might be worth looking at. And so I think that in this particular architecture and design firm, a lot of experience, a lot of understanding of education and what's required in the school to make sure that it's highly functional and has design features that I think will be very much a fit for the community of Blackfalds. So just some pictures here as well that you can see, very focused on a lot of natural products, open space, very bright design. You can see, I think from the top left, that's actually in Jasper, one of the projects that they did. And some wood features on the outside and some finishing that's quite attractive. So here's the project schedule as current. So right now we're in that schematic design phase, and we're 3 meetings in. We had the good fortune of convincing Myron to be a part of this journey, and so he joined us for the last design meeting, which was last week. We have another design meeting tomorrow. They're weekly. So we're 3 meetings into the schematic design process. And as you can see, that process is going to wrap up roughly around the end of the latter part of May. So when you think about the design of a high school in probably 5 to 6 weeks, it's a fairly steep undertaking, but certainly we've had that opportunity.
Just interrupt you there. We got a question since
Sure.
you were saying.
Absolutely.
Councillor Stenny?
I'm just curious if it would be possible to email these slides to the members of council who are not currently in chambers, as we are not able to see any of your slides.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just wondering if I should try.
Yeah, I'll just set aside
I
an
can
email,
email
and
him right
we
now.
can do that, yeah.
I can email him right now.
I'm just thinking about the TV too.
Okay.
Okay, you should be getting them shortly.
Just so
See how Thompson has a consent. Have any of you received it yet?
I just got it, so.
Oh, there it is. Are you 3 all caught up then? 1 thumbs up. Councillor Taylor, Councillor Schwab?
Yep, good.
Okay,
Okay,
we are set again.
okay.
That request access.
She said something about requesting access. Well, that one, yeah, it's access denied.
send those slides as well.
Are you sending it again? Because I tried it too and it's,
I think you've got to open it and save it and then send it to
Oh.
them, because the link in the email won't open if it's not from your.
Okay.
Because the original.
Right, that's right.
see how Thompson's gonna resend, opened up so that we can bypass that.
Email, so I can just email the council.
As a PDF, yes.
Small technical difficulties here, folks, for those watching. Comes with the territory, I guess it's all.
Keith, you have a second?
I sent them the website for the architects to look at anytime.
So let's just
Okay.
email it.
That one.
So maybe I can ask a question along
Sure.
this. So in terms of the P3, you said this is bundled, so is the intention that one organization, private organization is gonna partner for all 5 of these projects?
We've asked that question and I don't think we have clarification. Secretary Treasurer Hall attended the meeting 3 weeks ago, Roger, you attended on the P3 bundle and the steps involved, and I don't know if we had a lot of clarity on that side of it.
Yeah, no, there wasn't a lot there. I'm gonna say that I don't think they expect one building to be on all those projects. Also, there isn't dollars involved in private.
But they are trying to coordinate the timeline.
They are, yeah, their intent is to coordinate it right from beginning, right all the way till opening, with projected construction completion as per the schedule for, in our case, and in each of the cases, it will be September of 2024. So it is new territory for Alberta education, Alberta infrastructure with this approach. So it's, as we've asked questions, I think they're determining a lot of it as they go along, and we'll certainly share that information as soon as we have it. Because it's also recognized that the P3 process and P3 approach has not been in place for a number of years in education. So this is a revisiting and a new version of it. So it's a little uncertain right now. The other point I can make, last week, the government announced that they had originally a bundle of elementary schools that were designed to be P3 projects, and they actually abandoned the P3 concept and moved to just project management and funded through Alberta Infrastructure, Alberta Education. So it was kind of an interesting change or turn on that bundle, and so not sure if potentially this will go that same direction, but at this point it's designed to be a P3.
Do you know what stage it was that they abandoned it?
A lot earlier to start of construction than I think this schedule outlines. They were, I think in many cases, within a number of months of starting construction. And that could reflect when they went out to tender and tried to find viable companies to proceed with that concept. They just weren't satisfied with what came back and decided to go in a different direction.
Okay. Interesting.
You should have it.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Is that copy working for you? I see 1 nodding head, 2 nodding heads.
3 nodding.
Councilor Scott?
I don't see anything.
you guys get it?
Yep. Should get it.
I got mine, it's up. It looks awesome. Thank you for sending it.
Yep, mine's working. Okay, all right. We
I'll
can
proceed, okay. So just in terms of the timeline, going back to this project schedule, at this point, construction, if this follows this pathway, would begin next summer. So that is a projected timeline for construction starting, and then construction will complete at the end of June 2024. And as I just stated a bit earlier, opening of the school will be September of 2024. So a little bit of preliminary project information. This is actually different than was originally announced, and I just want to draw this point out, that originally the design and the design funding indicated that the school would be a smaller capacity with the ability to add portable spaces onto the site, and that's the phrasing of a permanent core or a core school. Core is defined as the amount of space that's designated at build. And then beyond that, that then scales up to adding portables and getting to a maximum number of students in that entire building. The change that came with the budget announcement in February with the funding approval was that the school is now at 970 core capacity, permanent core capacity, which is absolutely great news. That means that they're building a school and opening to have that much capacity. And that is well beyond even what we, as a school division, put forward in our capital plan. We originally were looking for an 850 school. And to have this come back as a 970 is absolutely great news, because that ensures that even though the building will not be anywhere near capacity at opening, over the period of time of growth, obviously in the community, the school's poised to accept those students and have that ability to have enough space, which is fantastic. The other point I will draw forward is for the areas within the school, there's a schedule that Alberta Infrastructure and Alberta Education puts forward. So this is that schedule of space. So for example, teaching stations, it'll have 18 classrooms, 4 science classrooms. It'll have some ancillary spaces, both 2 large and 4 small. Information services, CTS stands for Career and Technology Studies, and I'll speak more to that in a moment. One point I would draw on is the gymnasium at over 1,000 square meters. That is an extremely large gymnasium. We were very pleased to see that size. Understanding if a school at core capacity is 500 or 600, the size of the gymnasium would be much smaller. So that's one of the advantages of this announcement, obviously, is that it'll be a very large gym space, which will be welcomed. These are other area allowances. Just won't spend a lot of time, and you can see there's other aspects of the total size of the school. So it comes in at a little over 8,000 square meters of total permanent space. Just want to draw some information to you as a comparison, and I know I was the principal of Lacombe Composite High School for 5 years, so I know that school and the space very well. I'm sure many in the community also know that space because maybe some of you attended, but that's kind of a comparison that I would like to draw on. So this new school here in Blackfalds, as I mentioned, is a 970 student capacity, 8,332 square meters. Lacombe Composite High School is a 1,137 student capacity at 12,421 square meters. So you can see the difference in size in those 2 buildings. Also, Lacombe Composite High School has 8 dedicated career and technology studies shops. And I've listed those shops that are in that school. And in the new school here in Blackfalds, the schedule has 4 CTS spaces. And so it's an important point to draw out, simply because a build right now, the current schedule that's provided from Alberta Infrastructure and Alberta Education, that's determined as the number of spaces that we are allowed to include and plan for in the design of the school. And it is really the difference between the 1967 build and the 2020 build. And the actual space associated with those CTS shops is significantly different. Lacombe Composite High School, for example, if you go into their shops, they have huge amount of space for their fabrication, for their mechanics, for their construction, cosmetology. The space in this new school, it will still have those programs, but there will not be near that amount of actual physical space for those programs. So Alberta Education and Alberta Infrastructure speak a lot about flexible space and about multi-use, multi-purpose space. And what they told us is that in terms of those 4 shop courses that I'll show you based on the feedback that we're advising in the design, is that those shops in some cases will serve 2 different programs, not just a dedicated program. So I just want to draw that out as part of the information here this evening. The location you're very familiar with. It's right beside Iron Ridge Junior Campus, and that's currently where the site is for the school. The design committee, and just a list of the different members of that committee. We've had, as I mentioned, 3 design committee meetings, and really appreciative again of Myron being a part of that process to give us the perspective, and I think a lot of the information that we're going to need to flow forward when we move through the design process. The other question that has really been important for us is what to offer in the school. And a number of weeks ago, we launched a thought exchange opportunity to gather feedback from the community. We sent that out. I trust Council was able to see that information. I think it was brought forward, and this is the question that we asked, which is to give us some information on what options or electives and programs should we consider offering. We did have 124 participants with about 122 thoughts. I just wanted to share the information that came forward. So this is a word cloud from all of the feedback of the thoughts. And as you can see within that word cloud, it does give you a sense of the words that stood out that are important to the stakeholders who participated. I see mechanics, I see computer, I see welding, I see words like foods, trades, science is there. So that's important. And then I think the other part that's really important is with Thought Exchange, it actually rank orders the top thoughts that came forward in relation to the number of stars that were allocated based on those thoughts. It's out of 5. So this represents the top 6 thoughts that came forward. And if you look at all 6 of those different thoughts, they all do have a rather similar theme in regards to career and technology studies programming and what I would consider the traditional career and technology studies programs or opportunities, which are courses like mechanics, like welding, like foods, like cosmetology. So we took this information and we have used this information to guide the design process to this point. And so right now, in the design considerations, the information that we've provided to the architect, these are the career and technology studies programs that we've put forward to be built into the design. And I believe at tomorrow's meeting, the design committee will see some of these spaces and how actually they will look within the footprint of the school. So we're quite excited about that. But as you can see, welding, mechanics, construction, cosmetology, foods, a number of programs tied into computing science, information processing, media design studies, and then a strand called health, recreation, and human services. In addition to those CTS programs, we also recognize in Alberta, registered apprenticeship programs are really important, and they're programs that we have really invested heavily in across Wolf Creek. So I've listed out a number of those apprenticeship programs that are available here in Alberta. And it's not to say that every program listed will be part of what will be offered at the new school, but I think it just gives you a sense of the opportunities that are there. And as you know, with registered apprenticeship program, it truly is a partnership between the school and industry and post-secondary. And it's a very valuable opportunity for students because they graduate from high school with their first year of that apprenticeship under their belt. So it really gives them a pathway to get a head start into a trades-based career and gives them the technical skills and the ability to really move into the labor market and serve in a way where they're providing an essential service to move Alberta forward. The other part I can share is fine arts is in the design. So we have dedicated art space, drama space, choral music, guitar, and instrumental music space as well. And as I mentioned, a very large sports and physical activity design. And you can see just in the bottom right-hand corner of the slide, that's actually a schematic drawing of the gymnasium space. So the red represents a full basketball court, and you can see how much space is still left outside of that. So it is a very large space. As a matter of fact, you can run 2 basketball courts, just about full court, vertically as well as horizontally in that space. It is a large gymnasium, which is fantastic. This is a very, and I apologize for not being able to read this really clearly, but this is all we have at this point. I suspect tomorrow, as I mentioned, and future design meetings will have much more detailed information, but I'll just draw your attention to just some general information here. And you probably can't see the color coding very well, but the kind of red space at the beginning, at the front of the school, sorry, that's actually by the front entrance. So that's facing the Young Road, would be the front. And so that's the administration suite at the very front. And then as you walk into the school, that's an open space. So it's a gathering space. There's a learning commons over on the left-hand side, which should actually be on the south side of the building with lots of glass and lots of natural light flowing into that space. And then you can see the blue space being the gymnasium space, and then fitness center and some other classroom and ancillary spaces around that space. And to the, will be the north side of the school, which is closest to Iron Ridge Junior Campus. That's where the career and technology studies classrooms will be along that side of the building. It is a 2-story building, so this is the lower floor and this is the upper floor. So as you can see, classroom space on that south side of the design with lots of natural and open light coming from the south into that space. So some next steps to share with you, and I think I've touched on these already, but I'll just highlight a little bit here. That design process we're wrapping up by the end of May, and we'll get into the detailing of that space in the coming weeks. And certainly just want to once again extend appreciation for Myron and the staff here with the town of Blackfalds to be involved in the process, and just that spirit of cooperation from the town. We greatly appreciate that and value that. And that's pretty much a wrap for me with an overview of the project. Any questions?
Councillor Schwab.
Is there going to be a cafeteria space or a place where they can buy lunch to students?
There is. So in the design, I'll go back. It's really hard to see, but I'll try to point this out. So in the student gathering space, there is a large foods lab in the wing that is coming towards Leon Road. So that's on the left-hand side, that wing that's moving. There's a foods lab, and then there's actually a servery that's positioned right attached to the food space that allow for serving out into that student gathering space.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
There's learning stairs as well, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, good point. So there's consideration for what's called learning stairs between the bottom floor and the upper floor that actually would function as a staircase to go up. And yet you could also sit and have it as a performing arts area. Down to on the gymnasium on the south side, there's a green box. That's actually the drama space. And it opens up so that you can have performances happening in that space that can be viewed from the gymnasium from one side, and then from the other side from the learning stairs. So it has a really interesting design that would allow for small groups. The whole school wouldn't be able to fit in that learning stair space, but you could have a number of classes, for example, that could be a part of that, and to hear presentations or actually view presentations that are offered from the performing arts side of the school.
Councillor Hoover.
Yeah, just thinking about the Comstock High School, their Ecovision clubs, and they have a number of different things that go on there. A lot of it is outside, and I know there's limited footprint here. Is there consideration in this design for rooftop access? I mean, solar panels are obviously a big project. They're part of the original part of that Ecovision. There's not a lot of roof space here.
Yeah, so we did inquire about solar panels, and we were told that program's been discontinued. So that's not provided any longer. It was being provided through the government when new buildings were built. For example, Iron Ridge Intermediate Campus would be an example of that. So anything like that could be added to the school, but it would be through fundraising and sponsorship, which is what Macomb Composite High School has done very, very well over many years. So those opportunities exist. It would just have to be outside of the scope of this project and the funding envelope that we have for the project.
Councillor Schwab.
Is this just going to be a standalone school, or can modulars be added?
It's designed to be a standalone school, but there was a question that came forward around hypothetically a performing arts space. Let's say, for example, added onto it. And so the architect and design team is aware of that potential. And so when they come back with some drawings here shortly, we anticipate that they actually will have a design so that there could be a natural link or a hallway that could attach to that kind of space that's exterior to the building. One of the comments that was made in the meeting was because it is envisioned as a P3, as you're probably aware, P3, the ownership of the building and the maintenance of the building and changes with the building takes on a very different look and a different feel, because the building is not technically owned by us. We're tenants in the building for all intents and purposes. So there was a thought, and I think a fairly strong recommendation that if there is going to be something in the future added to the building, it would be designed in a way that it could be added, but it would be external to the footprint of this building, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, council? Not seen any, so thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you very much for your time. We'll keep you posted.
All right, we will head on to public hearing, which there is none. Business arising from the minutes. Blackfalds Transit Program and Service Review Report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So the item presented tonight is what administration is looking at. Hold on a second, I was losing this stuff. So this is being presented tonight. It's administration's overall view of what the potential Bolt transit could be. So Bolt will no longer be an entity after August 28, 2020. The Bolt fleet classes will be integrated into the City of Red Deer's fleet. And we're looking at how we can rebuild this program for our local conditions. Moving forward, if we do go forward with the options as presented tonight, we will end up looking at moving forward with a request proposal, service, and communication plan over the next couple of months, so that we would be able to move forward with the service level options that we've indicated here in time for fall riders.
All right.
So we've been,
You're not, sorry. Sorry if you paused, I thought you were ready for questions.
sorry. So since last fall, we've been working with the City of Red Deer and private public transit service providers and other internal and external stakeholders to determine what options Blackfalds has available to continue the transit service in some manner. With the City of Lacombe section removed and the recent changes to the City of Red Deer transit system, we're pretty confident that the service level can be 100% maintained within Blackfalds and back to Red Deer, using external contracted services initially until the program grows. So what we did is we had a short meeting with two members of council, Mayor Poole and Councillor Swab, which were part of the ad hoc Bolt Transit Governance Committee, and we met to review the options as presented in the report tonight. Overall, we'd like a standing committee to recommend moving forward with option one, which could be an intermunicipal and local on-demand transit service. So this service would be very similar to the Cochrane or the Okotoks service, where essentially the general public would call in to a phone number or an app and set up a departure and destination for the individual transit program. That would go from basically internally through Blackfalds, existing or utilizing the existing Bolt transit stops that we had in place, and further into Red Deer and back again. So a little bit more detail to option one. We would anticipate that private fleet buses would make approximately 48 trips per day on weekends and charters available for additional costs as needed for town business. The option would have local and regional transit loops, but they'd be requested through a call center or app, and they would be on demand. So service would still run from approximately 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. with on-demand service hours estimated at a maximum of approximately 5 hours per day. The service would be based on the actual riders and therefore be very efficient and transparent. We'd actually be able to see the numbers and where people are going to and from, so that we could be able to modify the routes as we move forward. So really what we're looking for tonight is a standing committee recommend that we draft up the RFP for transit services based off of the recommended service option 1, which would be intermunicipal and local on-demand transit service. And that would be, we'd be requesting that being brought forward to council for approval. I'll open up to questions.
Council, any questions? And I'll ask that you speak up a little bit because I find out that Councillor Schwab's having a hard time hearing us. Oh, my mic just turned off. Yeah. Councillor Rappel.
Perfect, thank you. So just to be clear, so they would, a resident, someone looking for a ride, would call or put in their request through the app, and it would pick them up at the bus stop, not at their residence.
That's correct.
Correct. Would it then do the loop of all of the stops before heading into Red Deer, if that's where they were going, or would it only go to the one bus stop that, you know, they requested to be picked up at?
So Councillor Rappel, it would actually go through a number of different callers. So they would set up so that they're picking up all the people along the route, or people that are within, you know, a reasonable time frame, and then they would, you know, drop them off at the according stop, and then probably go to Red Deer, drop off a few other people, and come back, almost similar to a shuttle sort of service.
Okay, so we would try to then gather as many people at once as it would be just one
That's right.
person. Okay. And then can I, that's what it says. What would the estimated number of buses be, or vehicles be?
So we would think we would need at least 2, and we probably want 1 on standby. Now that would depend on things like the wheelchair accessibility. So for instance, if we've got a single wheelchair spot in the bus, there are 14 passenger buses without that improvement, and then with the improvement, it's another, basically you lose 4 spots, so you end up with a 10 passenger bus. So depending on what our initial demand is, we would tweak those types of units for our ultimate purchase, or with just through the RFP, they would be required to provide us enough units to do that service level. There'd definitely be some give and take, but we would work through all that stuff.
Okay, and then just,
Third one.
yeah, sorry. So with their, how far in advance then would they have to place their order or their request?
I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it's within a couple of minutes of the actual stop needing to be picked up. And it probably, you can book them well in advance. I know I've used the Cochrane service just as a trial basis. But I believe there is a time factor limit for when you pick up that second bus. That would all be worked out through the RFP process.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Councillor Schwab.
I have 2 questions. So if somebody was wanting to go in for a medical appointment, would they call in and set a time that they want to get to their medical appointment to the transit in Red Deer, and then follow up through having another appointment scheduled to come pick them up at the transit in the north end of Red Deer, or how does that work?
So Councillor Swab, thanks for that question. So the north, you would have to coordinate the City of Red Deer Transit Rapid Gates service that runs every 15 minutes to make sure that wherever your appointment was, it was in the south end of Red Deer, in the central area, you got on the transit in time with that 15-minute window. But yes, that's essentially what you would do, is you would call in and you say, I need to get picked up, or I need to get picked up this stop, and I need to get dropped off at this stop, and then you can call again either before you get on the initial ride, or afterwards to get that secondary pickup option. It would be very similar to Uber.
Okay. And then cost per user, what have we determined a cost for Blackfalds and a cost for Red Deer? Is it all going to be on one card? How is that going to work?
So Councillor Swab, this is only for the Blackfalds Transit service. So any additional I guess alignment with the city of Red Deer rates will have to be negotiated with them. So right now on day one on September, it would be able to go through Blackfalds and then south to Red Deer and get dropped off at the north end by the new A&W.
Okay, thank you.
And there is the option, I guess, to explore having 2 or 3 other stops in Red Deer, but that might get into some other negotiations with the city of Red Deer to use their stops or the like.
Councilor Moore.
Sounds good.
So when I was looking at this, my interpretation was that, these requests were gonna be built around kind of a preset run. It's not gonna be arbitrary times that somebody can set, or, so if this, would it be correct in saying that they go into the app, they put in their general time that they need to travel, and that would tell them what stop they have to be at a particular time? Or is this gonna be completely customized? That sounds extremely difficult. I mean, I used to drive for a number of years a disabled transit, and each one of those rides were individually scheduled. It's extremely complex.
Yeah, the app helps with that, but you're essentially right, Councilor Hoover, is there would be windows that would be closed as you continued closer to the ride times, and they would actually just like the automatic booking systems of like airports and what, they would just jump that to the next spot. So yes, there would be that, half hour to an hour wait depending on whether that bus was full or not and how long until the next bus came in. So there would be that coordination, but I think it'd be definitely doable on day one with about 27 rides per day.
And I'm assuming that the return would be the same thing. It's just gonna say, this is the bus, the time the bus arrives and comes back. It's not gonna be pick you up at, well, unless you said that you're considering what.
Your hand before our screen went black. What's your question?
I don't know.
Says it's
You
on hold.
may not hear him.
Microsoft.
Oh, and Laura has emailed me that they lost connection completely. Such a wonderful day.
So then I do have a subsequent in the meantime.
Yeah.
So considering now, if we are considering the disabled buses, would they do a stop at some toll because of that? I mean, again, that might be more time consuming, and it is, but someone that's in a wheelchair potentially may have difficulty even getting to the bus stops.
We actually envisioned that the same question was asked by Councilor Mayor Poole, and we actually envisioned that they would have to get to that stop, and all of our stops are wheelchair accessible. We wouldn't do, individual door-to-door delivery. We could explore that option in the future, but on day one, we thought that because the wheelchair rider will be competing for other rider spots and vice versa, it would be better to just have it at the individual stops, because once they get to Red Deer or wherever they're going, they're still going to have to get where they need to go.
But clearly, this is something that's going to change over time.
And this does, we would discontinue then our service to Permian University, correct? We wouldn't be going north of Blackfalds at all.
No, not at this time, but we could explore that in the future as well. I guess just further to that too, we didn't look at door to door because then we'd almost be competing against taxi services. So we thought that it was good to be able to utilize existing infrastructure, and also the stops that we've got around town are pretty spaced out. As long as we can, coordinate that if a bus is coming to pick somebody up at the local stop, they can still make it to the express stop or all the way to Red Deer.
Will this be a long intermission or just a minute or so?
Yeah. Can I ask another question?
Well, don't give me this. We'll see if they
Oh,
reconnect, and if they reconnect,
I
then
think it's connected.
I'll let you.
It's showing them on the screen, but not their faces.
They probably have to reconnect on there.
Oh,
Well, you're not feeling good. Hey, Keith, keep this back on. Here we go.
look, we got you 3 back. Awesome. I'm going to give you a quick recap of what you may have missed. The question was asked about door-to-door, being picked up at your door and being dropped off for those that are that need disability help in terms of accessibility. That won't happen until maybe later on. And in terms of connection to Bourbon University in Macomb, that would also be terminated. We wouldn't go any farther than our community. And now, Councillor Pell has another question.
So there are, well, there is at least one community in Canada that instead of having its own transportation, subsidized Uber trips for its residents. Was that looked into or thought of or considered or?
We didn't look into that. We kind of try to keep the scope within a somewhat traditional municipal transit type of a service.
Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, one thing that I looked at with the numbers, I don't know if I have any certainty in any numbers right now on anything. It just seems like there's so much up in the air. What is our absolute longest we could postpone this before we have to make a decision? Like,
So Councillor Taylor, I'll try to answer that. We've been tasked essentially to try to make it a seamless transition between our riders that are going to not have a place to go after August 31st and be able to go on to our system. People start planning their transportation in July before school. So we're really, like, we've got a month to, get the RFP figured out and get that all in place, and then another month to essentially work with a company to kind of formulate how we're going to proceed, and then really another 3 or 4 weeks to kind of put the word out. So we're kind of at the limit right now. If we wanted to look at losing that public trust or our riders' trust and, devoiding the system for 6 months or a year, that's definitely a possibility that council could talk about. But then we're starting from square one. I guess the other part of the puzzle too is that this service on day one, based off of our estimates, we've taken the ratio of cash sales in the city of Lacombe to the cash sales in the town of Blackfalds to determine what the ratio of riders is, because really that's the only way we can do it. And it's about 38%. So that drops our rides per day down to about 27. So that's not 27 riders, that's 27 one-way rides on average per weekday. So really with those numbers, that's why we kind of formatted this as somewhat of a pilot program so that we could see what our intake is, because we are gaining greatly on the efficiency and on the, the ability for people to be able to access that service across Blackfalds and not have to go to Lacombe and back. So it's really dropping the route down by about 30 to 45 minutes round trip. And if you were to not include some of the local routes that may or may not be part of that round trip, you might even get down to half an hour. And then with the Gates rapid transit system that the city of Red Deer is starting on September 1st, that really is kind of the last great piece of the puzzle, because that allows us to basically avoid the 10 or sometimes 15-minute route to go from the north end of Red Deer down to the south end into the Sorensen station there.
Councillor Spaulding.
Can I ask what our cost savings would be from not being with Bolt and doing this new transit system?
So we're estimating, right now we pay $130 per hour for every serviceable hour that we're running the transit service to and from. So for instance, if it was, 6 in the morning to 8 at night, based off our existing service, we're running about 5 hours of service per day. And then you include all anyways, bottom line is we're paying $130 an hour right now for the drivers to drive a set route which could or could not have riders, and we'd be at anywhere between $85 to $100 per hour, all in per hour of service with this new system, and that would include the app and a lot more ability to tune the service to our own local conditions here. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Hoover.
Yeah, just a quick question. You probably do know, but just for the sort of benefit of everybody listening, where's the north hub going to be located for the city of Red Deer?
It's 77th Street, where the new A&W and Fast Gas is, right before the slough on 11A. It's right there.
Oh, that's a quick trip. Yeah. Okay.
It is quick. We're estimating there and back to be about a half hour.
I have a question. Who would be possible that would be bidding on the RFP?
Really, I'm pretty sure it'll be Southland and a couple other smaller companies. But Southland Transportation is the guys that do the city of Red Deer. Most of the city of Calgary, most of the city of Edmonton, city of Okotoks, city of Cochrane, and the Okotoks and Cochrane are both on demand. And the city of Red Deer is actually exploring that on demand option. So we're a little bit on the bleeding edge, but I don't think too much.
Councillor Taylor. Councillor Taylor, you've muted yourself. You need to take your mic.
I just want to say thank you. I appreciate the good work you guys have done. I think you've given us a viable option compared to where we are. If anything, this might be maybe a more progressive option for the future for us anyways.
There's no other questions. I do need a motion. Councillor Hoover.
I'm prepared to move the administrative recommendation that standing committee recommend that the RFP for transit services based on the recommended service option 1, intermunicipal and local on-demand service, be brought forward to council for approval.
Any debate on the motion? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Director Warren. We are now down to 6.1, COVID update.
COVID update. Sounds ominous. Good evening, Council and Deputy Mayor. Is your worship on?
Still, they're overtime. They're overtime.
Still on the teleconference.
Okay. Just a brief update, a little bit longer. Locally, today Protective Services participated in a parade of gratitude with the city of Lacombe. We had fire, municipal enforcement, animal control, and RCMP vehicles. We toured the city of Lacombe. Their emergency vehicles operated by all grocery stores, hospital, and care home facilities within the city. It was rather touching, actually. There was probably about a block and a half of emergency vehicles. I don't know if you've seen it on online yet, but the care home really was even more touching. The people were sitting outside, and then they had signs made up. in appreciation, as well at the grocery stores. Some of the grocery workers were out and see tears in their eyes as we came by and thanked them and stuff. So it was very well received. So I thank the home for inviting us to share that with them. And like I said, it was excellent participation by all communities. The birthday parades continue to be fairly popular. Requests are starting to taper off, which is something we kind of expected as they became more and more frequent. This is still being organized by the firefighters, and appreciate all the work they're doing for it, because they're also doing it on weekends as well. And we don't necessarily have the time to join in. Of concern this past week, complaints are starting to come in. With the weather getting warmer, we're seeing a lot more people outside. The skate parks, in particular the Optimist skate park, we're seeing a large amount of youth gather there now. We're getting complaints about not abiding by the regulations set out by the province. Today we attended 3 times, just talking with the youth, trying to explain, some of the things that they could look at doing to, abide by the rules, and explaining that, we're trying to work with them, trying to keep the parks open for them, but we're not going to be able to keep them open if they don't choose to follow the rules and whatnot. So they were very receptive about it. However, it's getting that messaging out to all of them, and what we're doing with them is saying, you got to pass this on to your friends and whatnot. But I am concerned because even coming here tonight, there was easily in excess of 15 kids out at the skate park, and they're up on the top, just side by side, like kids do. And so it's something that we're going to have to consider and look at. Some of the things I met with CSD, Jeff and I spoke this morning about it, and some of the things that could be done if the parks were closed, which is very difficult to actually organize or implement in this town, whether you use fencing or anything like that. So what we're looking at right now is modifying the signage to a little more clear message about the social distancing, physical distancing, because our previous message didn't describe actual physical distancing. And in particular, the skate park wasn't, signage wasn't put out of the skate park because of snow, and we hadn't thought that far ahead. So that's something we're going to be really pushing forward in the next year. So, but it's something that we're really going to have to monitor, and maybe something we're going to have to look at some other meetings if we're not able to get it under control here quickly. Also having communications develop some messaging for the web, in particular targeting parents to ensure that young people know about the physical distancing and some of the things to do with relation to when playing in the parks. So, not sure how that's looking yet, but it's something we need to get those clear messages out and get that messaging through another avenue to the youth. The ECC remains open. It's pretty much status quo as I spoke to people last time. All it was a difference of naming it, and we're doing well. Each department is acting in their role. Our department is doing a good job in logistics, getting us the material and equipment we need. Meeting regular with the clock, regional DEMS. One of the things that has come up here is putting out messaging to discourage garage sales. Warm weather coming up. We can't outright tell them no as a community, unless of course we had the authority of SOL to say no, you can't have, unless it was in the bylaw. But we can encourage the province to put out that message, in which case they can make that regulation that garage sales would be not allowed. And again, it's very hard with garage sales to maintain the physical distancing that is required under the provincial regulations right now. One of the other things that some of the communities are doing with summer coming up, they're looking at not putting out picnic tables out into the parks. And again, with the purpose of not encouraging large gatherings. So this is really one of the ways that we're going to slow the virus and encourage people not to gather for long periods of time in those groups. Another nice thing in our community here, starting today until the 26th, our local A&W has advised they'll be donating $1 from all teen burgers sold to Blackfalds FCSS. So I encourage everybody to visit A&W and enjoy a burger to help support our local FCSS. FCSS is continuing to work closely with the food bank, assisting them in their business continuity plans as well. They're offering first and third Wednesday of each month for food bank. Economic development continues to work with our business community, keeping them apprised of any changes the government has put in place, any grants that are available, and just feeling them out as to where they're at and how they're each doing. As I said, the fire department is continuing to put in orders. One of the concerning things is our PPE that we've been ordering. The government, each time we've ordered, has cut our orders in half. And recently, the fire department, because they do respond to medical calls, are required by Alberta Health Services to now wear gowns, masks, and gloves full of PPE when they respond to these calls. They're putting out these regulations, but when we put in our recent order on Friday, we're told there are no gowns available. So we're looking at other avenues there as well, so we can be compliant with the rules that AHS is putting in place. We're also concerned, as some of you may have heard, some of the care homes and whatnot have been having problems with the masks coming in. There's been some of the health aid workers have been getting rashes from this one mask that's being delivered. So we're going to be very cautious when our new order of masks do come in. The firemen will be wearing these to all calls. So we don't want them to have some adverse effect as a result of wearing a mask for a long period of time. The RCMP advisory, they're still doing well. They continuing to work 1 week on and 1 week off, but the 1 week off, some of them are working from home, responding to calls from there, as are our victim services. Victim services is working from home and very rarely coming into the office unless it's emergent nature. And again, that's all to avoid the spread. On a provincial note, the numbers have continued to increase, and they've been fairly large numbers, but as we said last time, that was to be expected with them now testing anyone in Alberta that has any symptoms. Currently, Central Alberta remains low in relation to confirmed cases compared to other zones. For example, Calgary zone has 2,077 cases, Edmonton 438, South 158, North 143. Central zone has 77. Some good news in our area here. Macomb County had 3 cases reported, 3 are recovered. Red Deer County had 12 cases reported, 11 have recovered, and there's still currently 1 active. Today, the province announced 105 new cases, bringing the total to 2,908. 63 of those are in hospital with 15 in intensive care. Unfortunately, 4 additional have died, bringing the total to 59 in Alberta. Good news is 1,230 of those have been confirmed as recovered. They've now increased their testing capacity to 7,000 a day. In the last 24 hours, they've done 3,994 tests. So that's, the more tests they're getting, the better statistics they're going to have and have an idea as to where the virus actually is and whether we have control of it. Of concern, 330 confirmed cases were in continuing care facilities, with 38 of these residents having died. So they're taking up a large portion of the cases, as well as those that have unfortunately taken their demise. Public health officials are working to contain outbreaks currently in 29 continuing care centers across the province. The province has advanced $24.5 million to operators of care centers to address costs associated with COVID-19, which will increase their staff, is for increasing their staffing levels, topping up $2 per hour for health aid wages, and up to 1,000 paid student practicum positions and fast tracking their training. Alberta Health Services also created a focus group to address concerns healthcare workers have related to the VPE. Again, this is relating to the masks that I mentioned. Another interesting note is they've put in place for truck drivers through 511 Alberta an interactive map showing rest stops over the last month. That's been a huge concern. Truckers haven't had anywhere really to go, and they're the line that's bringing us everything we need. So they're now having access to where rest stops are open, restaurants, vehicle inspection stations, as well as where washing facilities are open for them to access. On a federal note, Canada and the US have agreed to extend the border closure to non-essential travel until the 20th of May. Funding was announced for various federal departments to address small and medium-sized enterprises not eligible for existing financial relief. So they're putting money in order to save a lot of these particular areas. $500 million to Heritage Canada, established an emergency fund to support those in the arts, sports, cultural industries. And $962 million to regional development agencies and Community Futures Network. Another important bit that they're putting out is investing $1.7 billion to clean up orphan wells in Alberta, British Columbia, and Saskatchewan to keep people working during the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's definitely good news for us in Alberta if that was put up there. Dr. Tam, from Public Health Agency, she commented, "Now is absolutely not the time to change our current stance. We need to keep going on our public health measures, but I think it's a testament to the work of all Canadians that we've managed to move to this more positive direction," indicating that we're starting to get control, but she's fearful that if we start loosening the regulations too soon, that we could find ourselves sliding back. So, as a committee, I think, and I'll speak to you a little bit as the Emergency Management Committee, I think it's important that we look at what we're going to do with the parks, and in particular the skate park. The actual playgrounds hasn't really been a lot of complaints coming in relating to the playground specifically, but the skate park, it would be nice to be able to get some direction as to how the council committee would like to go. Are they happy with us increasing the communication and the messaging and the signage? Or are we at a point where we want to look at actually closing the skate park? So, I leave that, you guys know.
Yeah, I see two questions. I'm just
They're on it.
waiting for him to be done. All right,
There's my pause.
Councillor Stenny, and then Councillor Swap.
So I understand that our youth love the skate park. We love the skate park, but I think under the circumstances and the fact that we are having to monitor it and our RCMP here having to go there multiple times a day with warnings, I personally think that it just needs to be shut down. It should be closed, and we should be handing out fines for anybody who chooses to ignore the fact that it is closed. That's just my personal opinion. I think that even just once one or two fines are handed out, people will realize that we can't keep doing this. It's not safe.
Councillor Swap.
I agree with Councillor Stendy. We're teaching our children to not go out in public and to social distance, and that means everybody in our community has to do it. I think with the warm weather, our parks are going to get bombarded by children too. And I mean, the youth love to play. The kids love to play. And be playing. We need to social distance ourselves, and that means all people, including children. So I'm for shutting down the skate park, but also I think we need to revisit the parks as well in general because the weather is getting nice.
Mayor Poole.
Thank you. First of all, thanks to yourselves and everyone who is trying to keep the enforcement going and keeping the warning going, and the amount of work that you are doing to provide the information that's necessary. I guess the question I have to administration is, what physical measures could we take other than the occasional fine handed out, which may work? What physical things could we do at the skateboard park especially that would allow us to close the park, other than putting we could put a tape around it, but we know how effective that would be if students decide not to utilize it. So is there something that we can physically do? And I guess I'd direct that to CEO Thompson.
Well, we could put fencing up, but I mean, even fencing, if you tried hard enough, you could gain access, but definitely tape would work. We'd have to go as far as putting up fencing around the facility.
What would the cost of that be?
I think we try snow fencing. We do have snow fencing on hand, so it's just a matter of putting the posts and installing the snow fence. So we do have the materials. It's just some labor, probably 2 or 3 hours.
Okay.
Councillor Rappel.
Thank you. Yeah, I did certainly see quite an increase of usage of both the park and the playground this weekend and today as well. Yeah, the playground by my house was busy all day. And there was certainly more than one family at a time on the playground. So yeah, my question for that is, to further close the parks, what more is it going to take? Like, is the answer fines, or do we bigger signage? I know something has to happen. I'm just, how much money do we really want to?
Well, my suggestion, and take it for what it's worth, I do think, and I agree that the skate park, as much as it hurts me to even think that, I think is something we need to look at closing. Tape won't work. Fencing will prevent some, but we will still get some, in which case then, yeah, we could look at enforcing that point with them. The playgrounds, I don't know know how you're gonna do that, other than putting up signage saying they're closed, and then we could deal with it on a case-by-case basis, if it chose to close the playgrounds. Because I don't think it'd be realistic to have CSD fence off all the playgrounds, and I don't think they have the ability, and cost would be really high as well. If they want to get in, they're going to get in. But those that want to listen and follow the rules, with signage, I think that will make a big difference.
Councillor Hoover? And then Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I think we're all circling around the same idea. My initial thought was, what options do we have for fines? That would be my question. Because obviously, in my mind, I don't think we should go where some of the things I've seen in the news where people are getting $750 fines for sitting on a bench. So do we have, something that's meaningful but not outrageous? And then my comment would be with the skate park, I don't know that you need to fence it off. You just need to make it unusable. Put fences inside the skate park itself might prevent people from using it more so than putting it around the perimeter, having an obstacle, because obviously they can't skate down into it. They're not going to use it. That might be simpler, but that's my thought. But the question would be, what are our fine options? Do we have to set that, or is it provincially regulated?
See, Director Barnes might have an answer for
I
that.
think a perfect thing for that is put the skunk back.
Yeah. On the long rope.
Sorry.
So for those of you that didn't hear that online, Councillor Barnes suggested putting the skunk back. But I think that skunk has found a new home.
Kennedy's, the keys.
The fine aspect, I'd have to look into the fine aspect a little bit more. I agree, I wouldn't want to be seeing some of the huge fines, but again, those are for the provincial regulations where they put in place, like for large gatherings and stuff like that. So we may not meet that if you've got people that are just not following our closure of the parks. So I'll have to do a little more research into that. But I should be able to track those answers down tomorrow, see what other communities are doing as well. I'm sure they're not going after large fines.
Councillor Taylor and then Councillor Stindy.
Yeah, I think the skateboard park probably shows us where we have an issue. But that issue is likely going to move. It will put a fence around there, and I think that probably would be somewhat of a deterrent. And that's not a bad choice. But I guess the thing is I think we might start chasing our tail, because when I look at people who are in Vancouver and where they've had warm weather for a while, I mean, there's people everywhere, and it's something that we're going to have some difficulty dealing with. The fine aspect, certainly, I do appreciate Councillor Hoover's comment about having a reasonable fine. We're dealing with spring fever. It's just like horses in the spring. They want to get out and they want to get rainy, and trying to find a way to get them to be responsible. I think that's the big thing is I certainly like the communication portion of that, because it's about getting it back home. Like, I mean, I get complaints all the time from my family about this, but I mean, it is true. It's we have to do it. So I'm in favor of putting a snow fence around there. We have the materials, doesn't cost any money. It's very clear that the kids are like 20 or 30 kids close to each other. I mean, there is no social distancing, and I guess, it goes back to, people will say why it didn't happen. Well, I guess it comes, kids are kids and parents are parents, and we all have responsibilities. Pushing responsibilities a little bit back, and that might be with good communication, because I think we're going to deal with a lot more of this. I see teenagers going 3 in a row all over the place. I see all kinds of things, and it's spring. They feel like they're at their limit. They want to get out, and we've got a lot of nice weather, and we are already exasperating our resources. So we have to be smart in our choices, I think.
Councillor Steddy?
So on the note of social gatherings, I have noticed on social media that there are more and more complaints about backyard barbecues and people having parties at their homes. What should we be encouraging our residents to do when they see a situation like that? Who should they be contacting? Is it AHS? Is it the RCMP? Because there is some conflicting information, I think, out there. So if we could just clarify, in a situation like that, what should a resident do?
Okay, that was coming up next. I wanted to deal with the skate park and the playground first, but Alberta Health Services has been clear that they contact Alberta Health Services first. And there's investigators there. The RCMP will investigate them, as will municipal enforcement. But Alberta Health Services has the lead, and we will assist them or take it on accordingly when they contact us. If they don't have any success with Alberta Health Services, I would definitely contact the RCMP, like late in the evening and stuff like that. However, I do have your message that was sent from the weekend here, and it is concerning absolutely that we're starting to see that, and that's definitely another avenue we've got to go down. But there are things in place for that, and there's also fines in place for that already. Does that answer the question?
It does, thank you.
Okay.
Mayor Poole?
Thank you. So, Manager Morrison, would it be possible for you to put the levels or the means of communication on our website so that people have a clear understanding of who is responsible for what and how they can move forward, and make sure that that messaging meets the approval of both AHS and the RCMP, so that people phoning in will be able to have a direct line to know what they are supposed to be doing?
Absolutely. I'll double check that Miranda and Shelby haven't got it on there already somewhere, but if it's not on there, we'll get it on there so there's a clear understanding how that communication goes.
And apparently over the weekend, there was a person who got twisted around many times.
Yes.
And did not manage to get the message through to anybody.
Yeah, no, I've actually got that email in front of me here, and it is concerning, absolutely.
Good. So I guess before we move away from that, you tried to get an answer from council beforehand, and I think that you're asking for us to be more specific regarding what we want to do with skateboard park. And I guess, is it appropriate for council to be putting forward a motion as to what they want to have happen, or should we give direction for administration to work on?
I think direction would be fine, your worship.
Okay, then I agree with the suggestions already that barrier around the skateboard park was probably a good idea. I'm also wondering if we could lock the gates, and I know we can't stop people from going over the boards, but the padded area over on the other side, if we could lock it so that and mark it closed on it. And I guess what council needs to decide right now is, are we closing playgrounds and marking closed on them? And well, from my perspective, I don't think we should do it with parks or trails, because that's pretty well unenforceable. But I think that's the question that's being asked of us right now through the chair.
Councillor Appel?
Yes, I agree with Mayor Poole, and I would be in favor of making a motion that we advise town staff to go ahead and put up a snow fence and increase signage in the areas that people are congregating, even if that means signage that now the playgrounds are in fact closed. But I do think that needs to be followed up with, of course, the most expensive part of enforcement. And then fines if people are breaking the rules, because that enforcement needs to be paid for somehow, and that's where that money should be coming from.
So just for clarification, we are closing the playground.
That's the motion, that's what I would put forward, yes. Yes, sorry, playgrounds, but not parks and trails.
So you're putting forward a motion?
Yep.
Okay, you three up there, there's now a motion on. I did have Councillor Schwab and then Taylor, and now I see Councillor Stendy as well, so we'll do that order.
So I agree, if we're gonna close one park, we need to close them all, because the kids are gonna congregate from one area to the next. So I agree with that motion.
Park or playgrounds? Pardon?
Yes.
Playground.
I do have-
Playground
Yes.
and skate park.
Councillor Taylor, then Councillor Stendy.
Well, you've also got the dog park in there too. When you do that, there's gonna be probably some pushback, but, what I wonder is, having some kind of slogan, good neighbor slogan, reminder that what is the number? How many people, social distancing, what does that mean? How many people can you have somebody come over? What is it? Where are we at? Because I think not everybody's clear on that, even though, there's a bunch out there, you can look it up, but I think us having something like that is, rather than just being, this is a movement, and it is softening in a bit with something like that, I think would be a good thing to do.
Councillor Stendy?
So just a point of process, should this be coming from council or is this from the emergency management committee?
Mayor Poole?
I believe that seeing as this has come to standing committee, that it would be appropriate for them to make the recommendation. And that's a very good question, Councillor Stendy. I'll ask CEO Thompson at this point just for clarification as to where it should come from.
Well, definitely, it's a little bit confusing because we're utilizing Ken's discussion right now as our emergency management
Yes.
committee meeting. And so all of council is invited. I would say that the motion would come from the standing committee in this case. So.
Yeah, subsequent.
I think Councillor Stendy wants to subsequent that one, or was that a thumbs up? Okay. Mayor Poole.
Thank you, and very good point, Councillor Stendy. So as a point of process, would it be possible that the motion be to recommend to the Emergency Services Committee? And then the Emergency Services Committee could accept that motion within this meeting? Is that a possibility from process?
Yeah, it is, Your Worship. I was just giving some more thought to this discussion. With the warmer weather that we're seeing, what if we looked at this current week to enhance our messaging out to the public, maybe even as a public announcement on the local radio station, Lacombe, to see if we can get people to take heed of the concerns. Otherwise, we will be closing those. So give it 4 or 5 more days for us to see if we can get people to listen and behave appropriately before we do that. The council will be willing to do that, and then we could revisit it at council on Tuesday.
I'm going to let Councillor Appel jump in front of you there. Councillor Hoover, just as it's her motion.
Thank you. I would be fine with that, seeing as I am on the emergency management committee, that's why I wanted to make that motion. But I do feel that then if we're muddying the waters between the committee and council, that we should be holding those emergency management committee meetings separate from council meetings, as we were before.
Councilor Hoover?
Yeah, my 2 cents. I understand the sentiment from administration. I think we've been gentle throughout this process. I think we've been behind what most communities have done. We've clearly got an issue that's going to grow. And I think all the messaging in the world, there's still going to be some people that are just simply going to take advantage of the flexibility that we've given here. And I do agree with Councilor Taylor that the dog park is a questionable one, but I think playgrounds, certainly there's lots of surfaces that we're worried about transmission through. That's the clear threat there. And then the skate park is just simply numbers close together. Dog park, probably not as much of a threat and maybe not something that we have to consider, but I think we've been very flexible up until this point, and I think that if we were to support this motion, we're not the bad guys that are starting this trend out.
Mayor Poole?
So we have a recommendation from administration, and I think through the chair, I heard Councillor Pell say that she'd be willing to withdraw that motion at this point. But I guess my concern is around the skateboard park at this time and whether or not we feel any amount of social messaging will stop the folks from going to that venue. And I guess with your permission, I go through you to the CAO for that.
Definitely, I think the skateboard park has to close, and so fencing around that is appropriate, but I think with the playgrounds, administration would like to see if we can get the public to refrain from the close distancing. I know that might be difficult with warm weather, but with families and young children, I think there's more parental control within the playgrounds, hopefully, and maybe we would see that take place.
Councilor Stendy?
So seeing as Councillor Appel has withdrawn her motion, I would like to make 2 separate motions, if I may. The first being that the skate park close as soon as administration can get that organized. And the second would be that we also close all park equipment. So not the dog park, just the park equipment. Again, as soon as administration can manage to make that happen.
Councilor Poole? Sorry, Mayor Poole?
I'll be a councillor tonight, I don't mind. I do to you too many times. So I guess for clarification, through the chair, for clarification on the second motion, how do you propose closing the playground equipment?
Councilor Stendy?
I think if we follow the lead of the multitude of other communities in Alberta that have closed their parks and put up caution tape as well as signs, and encourage people, if they see it being used, to let our officers know, and we can follow through either with warnings or with fines, however the officer attending the scene sees fit.
Okay, we will deal with the first motion, which is the skate park. As a point of order, which you have to restate the second one after we're done with this one. Okay. So the first one, the motion of closing the skate park as soon as administration is able. Any questions or comments on that one?
Just
Councilor
the
Bell?
question that we're in the standing committee of council, so would that recommendation have to be put forward to next week anyway? So, or are we allowed to recommend that to administration right away?
I think Mayor Poole has an answer for that.
Okay.
So my recommendation would be when we finish this meeting, that we convene a meeting of the Emergency Services Committee and deal with the motions that are recommended to the committee, if that would be acceptable to the other committee members.
Okay, any other questions on that? Seeing none, I call for the question. All those in favor? It's carried unanimously. Councillor Stendy, your second motion.
You want me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I propose that we close all park equipment, not the dog park, just the actual park equipment that children play on.
And that recommendation is also going to the management, the emergency management committee.
Yes.
Mayor Poole?
So I'll put this through the chair to administration. What was your rationale by recommending that we increase the communication for the next week until our next formal meeting, in order to, rather than closing it off? Is it going to be an onerous duty to close it off? How long will it take if we put all of the people involved in it to get it done?
I don't believe it'd be an onerous task. I mean, we're just looking at placing the tape up. You know, and definitely it will be going back and forth to probably put it up again. But the reason that I brought it up is I think from what I've been hearing, people really appreciate the fact that the playgrounds are open. And I think especially now with the warmer weather. And we just thought that with additional messaging and letting them know that should we not get compliance, that they will be closed, that we could see the us achieve what we're trying to get with social distancing.
Mayor Poole subsequent, and then Councillor Stendy.
So I guess my difficulty is, how could we really define that we are meeting the social distancing requirements, because we don't have enough staff to put people there on a regular basis, and it's going to be hit and miss. So, you know, do you really feel that that would be adequate, given the fact that we have evenings where a lot of people will end up going out in the warmer weather, and we're not going to have anybody going by?
Definitely, there's no way that we could control it adequately. I guess we're just counting on the drive-bys that staff are doing, and any reports that we get from the public for people not obeying that is all we can go by.
I think if there were more messaging out there, that would encourage people to also be watching the park or playgrounds a little more, and we would probably see an increase in the number of complaints coming into us if the messaging has gone out that, hey, if you don't comply, the playground will be closed. And that way we've got the public kind of facing it as well.
Councillor Stendy, and then Councillor Taylor.
So my concern is that the same children who are using the skate park and not listening to the officers already about warnings, when the skate park closes, where are they going to end up? At the normal parks, using the regular equipment. So if we close one, I feel like we need to close them all.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I disagree somewhat with that. I think the parks will be moving to the fields, will be moving everywhere. I think we're dealing with spring fever, just like horses that rangy. They want to get out. Kids are who they are. People are who they are. I think messaging is pretty good, because it is a reminder saying, you know, look, at making a statement by shutting down the skate park, I think is responsible. I think we're going to be chasing our tail on this quite a bit. It's, for me, I agree. I like the part about just shutting down the equipment, but it's about, I think the messaging is really important. I think our citizens, they are in that state of mind where they just want to get out and do things, and just reminding them the whole thing about, I think it's always to do that first, because the messaging, you forget the message even though it's out there a lot. And then if we have to do that, I certainly would be in favor of doing that, shutting off the park equipment. What we're trying to do is just basically be compliant, but that's the way I feel. I think we still should do a little bit more messaging on this. And if they're not going to be, they'll be on the trails. They'll be somewhere. Kids will be doing what they're going to be doing. And when I look at other provinces where it's warmer, my gosh, I mean, take a look at our Prime Minister, for crying out loud. They're all, but it's just, that's what we're going to deal with the spring here, and how to get ourselves through it to be the most effective as possible.
Mayor Poole?
Just to the public who are watching this, no matter which way I vote on this particular motion, I will respect the motion of council to when I go into the Emergency Services Committee. I will respect their motion and the results of that motion.
Councillor Stenny?
So I would just like to remind everyone as well that we have an enormous amount of beautiful trails. People can get out for a walk or a bike ride. We have green spaces that, as long as they are physically distanced from other people, they can use those spaces. We have lovely gardens that are opening up. May 1st is registration, I believe. There are a lot of outside activities that you can do that don't require you touching playground equipment that somebody else is going to be touching directly after you.
Mayor Poole?
Just clarification of that, because when I was in town hall, Medical Director Henshaw reminded us that the community gardens have not been approved yet as a gathering spot, if we were talking about community gardens. So that will be hopefully coming out in the near future, but it has not been approved yet.
Councillor Stenny?
Can we just get clarification from administration then, because they've advertised the community gardens on the town Facebook and website today?
And just elaborate.
Councillor Poole?
It sounded like there are a number of activities, outdoor activities, that Medical Officer Henshaw is looking at. She described it as a suite of activities that they're going to be reviewing and providing very soon. So I don't think we're amiss to go ahead with the application process. And I believe that it will be, by the time they're ready to open, it'll be well defined.
All right, I don't see any other questions, so motion to close the playground equipment. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Is there anything further? Harrison?
That's it. Thanks.
Just then clarification as to what we're going to do with the emergency management committee meetings, if we're going to be still combining them with other council meetings, or if we're going to hold them separate.
I was of the understanding that we were going to have a meeting after this, so I thought we'd bring that up at that time.
At that time,
Yeah.
perfect, thank you.
If that's suitable.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're now 6.2, bylaw 1148.2, Fortis-Town Franchise Agreement Amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Olford. So this discussion has come up a couple of different times over the last little while. Administration has learned that Fortis has applied to AUC for approvals of orders confirming boundaries of exclusive municipal franchise areas. We have a franchise agreement with Fortis. Fortis was looking for AUC to settle the dispute. So what they did is they basically ruled that if a municipality wants to have the ability to have a franchise agreement with another organization, we can do so in accordance with Section 46 of the MGA, but we have to revise our bylaw. So recently we met with Fortis, and really what we're asking tonight is that the service providers outside of Fortis that have any sort of services within the town of Blackfalds limits actually sell those assets back to Fortis at a reasonable rate, so that basically the AUC decision and the recommendation coming forward from the administration would allow them to come in and essentially buy those services back and then go through and utilize their rate requirements to upgrade those services or to maintain the existing level of service. There's an attached drawing as well too, which outlines the number of services that would be affected by this. And really, by moving this forward, we would have to amend the bylaw, the existing Fortis bylaw, which is 115613 to 114820 as further attached. So we're recommending that Standing Committee of Council move forward, recommending to Council that bylaw 114820, amending bylaw 115613, be brought forward for consideration for first reading.
Questions? Councilor Hoover.
I'm not going to pretend to completely understand what the intention is. I guess the amendments would speak further to that. How would this impact, say, our solar program? Would we have to sell that equipment to Equus, or is this something that would remain in town?
No, Councilor Hoover. So all the existing Equus assets that are within the municipal boundary would be sold to Fortis, and they'd be responsible to maintain those. It would be part of our franchise agreement. The franchise agreement says that Fortis must bear the full responsibility for the owner of our existing electrical distribution system, so that's only the public-facing system. So for instance, in Olds, they have their own electrical service provider, whereas we have a franchise agreement with Fortis to maintain those streetlights and that infrastructure. And it's based off of the rates that are outlined under the UC.
Councilor Taylor.
So does this go back to the annex lands? And my understanding is, I think what the rub was is that when Fortis buys there'd be the light poles or whatever, they've installed the infrastructure, they buy it at a depreciated value. So the people who had their franchise, they had it, they're getting money for it, but then they're going to get nothing for what they have. You know, I guess that's, am I correct in that?
Can you explain that one more time, Councilor Taylor?
Yeah, my understanding is like, you know, some of that infrastructure that was put in, like if Fortis was running the franchise, they had the light poles and they had everything. But if somebody else, I can't remember the other company that had a franchise, they also were serving the annex lands, and they had, it was through a co-op, I believe, and the co-op would be made to sell their light standards to Fortis, but at a depreciated rate, not at what, there wasn't, you know, like they depreciated it down so much that they weren't getting money back. If I remember, that was part of the rub for that. Am I correct?
Councillor Kendry, yeah, so if we were to move forward with this bylaw, the Equus services would be reviewed and the existing infrastructure would be prorated. Whether or not that would be less than the value that was installed or not, that would be up to the unique situations. I do know that the areas outside of our annex area would still be done through Equus or other co-op memberships, but essentially Fortis is providing that main service stepped down from the larger companies like Altalist Electrical and those types of things with your big infrastructure coming across town. So really what this does is this gives Fortis, our franchise utility, the ability to go in to these locations and work with the landowners to get that changed over. It just solidifies our existing franchise agreement even a bit more under Section 46.
All right, Councillor Bell.
Thank you. So are these services then that are on the map, are they new that have been put in since 2013?
No,
or were they were existing ones?
They're existing whenever the farmer, the acreage owner wanted to put those in. So they're probably 30 plus years old.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Mayor Poe.
So my question is a little different, and possibly it's already covered off in a franchise agreement that we have. If we were to move forward with something like a cogeneration from waste, and contracted with a separate company, and there was energy production from that company, would that be allowed under the franchise?
Yes, Mayor Poole, through the chair. Any buyback into the existing grid system is an option under the Fortis agreement. We do that with our solar panels. It would be the same sort of agreement or the same sort of vehicle to do the buyback with any other type of diesel power or the like, as long as we're putting that power back into the grid.
Thank you.
I have a question. I remember this coming to us, and both the co-op and Fortis came citing their case to council, trying to put us in between. So has this whole case been settled? Because if we were to put change this agreement, that's kind of leaning in Fortis's way, unless the other governing body has dealt with it.
So it was somewhat tabled. So they said that yes, Fortis has a right to come in here and do this all, but they want to use the existing areas in the agreement or the existing verbiage in there, which is the same. It's just what happens is Equus, which is your co-op provider, pushes back and just really puts up any wall that they possibly can. And so these services stay in Equus's bailiwick. And I guess really what it comes down to is what's outlined in the letter there, that by passing this bylaw, it will ensure that our municipality collects the appropriate franchise fees and linear taxes from its residents. And it will also provide our residents with clarity as to the electrical distribution service provider within our municipality. So what that does is the co-op electrical services, they're not required to meet those same rate stabilization and the linear taxes and the like that Fortis is requiring under our bylaw. So it just gives them a little bit more ability to work with the individual private services to be able to get those services changed over, in fact, make them safer for everybody.
Councillor Bell.
Is there potential then for additional costs to be borne to those owners of those lands for getting their energy switched over, or no?
We did ask that question, and more than likely it's actually a savings for them. And then with that, they work through a service provider agreement with the individual service people that are getting us new service. And they're quite confident that there would be no additional costs unless it was an upgrade to the infrastructure so that it can bring it into the safety requirements.
Mayor Poole?
Currently, do we have any Equus utilizers within our developed areas of our town? And if, did we have before we developed out to them and have already taken that area over?
Your worship, to answer your question, there is a lot of services that are within our developed area. If you look at that map, there's for instance, there's the Rutten acreage, that would be that service. The developers basically just build around them. And then Fortis, it's funny because the developers and Fortis pay for the backbone to get that power to a certain location, and then Equus steps it down and brings that onto site. So the power that's off-site from Equus's services in this area are being fed by Fortis.
Mayor Poole?
I'm prepared to move that Standing Committee of Council move for recommended council bylaw 1148, amending bylaw 1156-13 for consideration of first reading.
Any debate on the motion? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Director O'Aaron, are you staying for 6.3?
I will hang out here for a bit, yes.
So 6.3, the RV sanitary dump station relocation options.
So as part of the Twin Arena, the existing dump station that is north of Stanley Street and west of Broadway will have to be removed. So what we've done is under the 2019 budget deliberations, funds were allocated an amount of $180,000 to build a new dump site within the municipality. And previously we had looked at a number of different options. And further to that, we brought some of these options forward to council at the January 28th meeting, at which time the biggest challenge with putting it at the old public workshop was the issue of South Street and Highway 2A with that left-hand southbound turning movement. And so what happened is council referred that the RV sanitary dump station item brought back to administration for further review. So what we've done is we've outlined a little bit more detail as to the options that we've looked at. Option one is All-Star Park location, so that would be directly east of the Lady Center. That was actually the original option that was brought forward from Rec Committee back in 2014. This area is, again, east of the Lady Center, so it's right adjacent to the campground area, and it has excellent access to the local roads there and the major southern access into town. We really have a good number of the traveling public would see that area. There's really no residential in that zone, and it aligns with tourism activities. Obviously, the needs of the camping facility adjacent there would be excellent for the RV dump. And then really, the option has been previously discussed with some concerns on additional traffic and Ozone Road. However, with some changes to that intersection as well as the existing South Street and Vista Trail major areas, we really don't see any problems with trailers moving in and out of that location. There's also a cost estimate and cost benefit attached. Option two, again, which is what I talked about before, was public works site. We actually refined this option quite a bit. I went down there and looked at it, and really the best option would be to move the proposed dump station from on the shoulder of the road west into the actual existing parking lot of the old public workshop. That way we'd be able to utilize existing gravel and really the turning movements would work in there. So that's almost the cheapest option, although it's very similar to the cost for the All-Star Parkway option. And then option 3, we looked at the 10-acre operation site. Access may not be as easy for users. There'd be a requirement for significant fencing, and we would have to actually build a northern access to the site. Our biggest concern is that administration has noted that the entire 10-acre parcel may need to be developed in the future for public works, and once we put that, and Parks and Recs operation, once we put that dump station in there, it'll be a on-time fixture there. So the first 2 options, as far as the financial implications, would meet the allocated budget dollars. And in fact, without doing the pay system, both options are valid there. So what we're recommending is that Standing Committee of Council recommend the council to authorize the installation of the new RV dump station, either north of the campsite access at All-Star Park, adjacent to the waiting center, and further the council, Standing Committee of Council recommend the council RV dump station remain as a free service for users, which is what our cost is based upon.
Questions? Mayor Poole.
Thanks for bringing this back. There was a lot of interest in RV station when we put it out there the first time, and I think you've given us some wonderful options. I had a little bit of difficulty at first trying to orientate myself, and just to confirm it, the parking lot that we see to the left is the Waiting Center parking lot. Is that correct?
On the first figure workshop?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. So right now, whenever somebody comes and accesses the campsite, we put in that stop sign and that operator there a couple of years ago. So they come off the pavement on the north side and they'd be greeted by the attendant, and then they could either immediately go and dump, or they can go out to their site and then come back around and dump there. This option is probably the least invasive option because we have the ability to essentially just gravel a different area, put in some infrastructure there, and move forward with it.
And so it's good. When we were looking at it in 2014, one of the big concerns was that we were coming in off Leung Road and we were utilizing that road that was going to go into our existing All-Star parking lot and moving from there, and that would take a lot of area out of the possible park area to the north of that. So this is a much better design idea. My question is with the regards to the free, having it as a free service. Would it be cost effective to have a charge for out-of-town persons in there? And I guess it would be the question as to whether a system could be set up that would be, make it viable for a person from out of town to have to pay while the person's in town would have a free service.
Your worship, through the chair. Yeah, really, you could put the pay meter system in there, but that would cost between $40,000 and $60,000 additionally, and then you'd have to have power there. And then depending on what type of system you buy, it may be problematic for maintenance. It does work in a lot of situations, but really, unless you're charging everybody, I don't see why we want to spend that capital dollars up front. We can always look at that in the future too, and add it in the future.
Councilor Taylor?
Sorry, I agree with the recommendation, and I'd be prepared to move, actually.
So are you moving, where did it go? You're gonna move the recommendation?
I agree both recommendations, but I'll just move recommendation number 1, I guess, that the Standing Committee of Council make recommendation. You can read it, so, unless you wanted to put together one motion, I'm good.
I think it will stay as 2. Any, Director Ware?
Can I just suggest that you add on the fact that it would be an unpaid or free service for users unless you wanted to bring that forward as a second motion? That would be a different cost comparison.
I do.
I agree with both, and I'd be willing to either split it or take it as one complete motion. I don't see us spending $40,000-$50,000 to get $5. And if anybody's camping right there, it's just part of the service of them being there. I think we had enough public feedback in that there. It's an attraction for people to come to town, and just keep it simple and keep it going. If anything, I would look at seeing a bit of asphalt down there, so when people are cleaning their trailer, they're not, it doesn't turn into this big mud hole, that's all.
Councillor Taylor, there will be a splash pad installed in there. Sorry, the figure doesn't really show that, but there will be a splash pad in there.
Okay.
All right, so we have Councilor Taylor's moved the first motion. Any other debate on that? Questions?
Yeah, just a comment. I really wish that the operation center location wasn't such a substantial cost difference, because having the RV dump station right next to a visitor center and where there's going to be a school, like, that just makes no sense. That would be the last place that I would put it. I realize it's close to the campground, and that's great, but being right in there, yeah, that's all.
Councilor Hoover?
That being said, though, I wonder though if that allows us the ability to put in washrooms in the future, since there's infrastructure for sewer, possibly something that will upgrade that in the future.
Yeah, Councillor Hoover, there is services to the east of the northern access there. So you could put washrooms in anytime you want, regardless of these services. These services will tie into those services on the east side of the access and actually go north.
Otherwise, I mean, I like it. I think it makes most sense in this location, and I think it also removes the problems or perception of a problem for hazards at South Street and Highway 2A, so I'm happy with it.
Councilor Cindy, I believe, right? Yes.
So just a couple of comments on that. There are actually washrooms at the Wadey Center, and having this there may bring more people in the doors as well while they are waiting their turn. And also, I'm not concerned about it being close to the school, because generally people are not camping as much during the months that their kids are in school, because it's the middle of winter.
So with all the time that we've had the RV dump station located where it is right now, have there been a large number of complaints from the neighborhood regarding any difficulties that it's had other than the excess traffic?
I know, your worship, the odd 1 or 2 times over the years it's gotten backed up, and that's been a complaint. But we just go in there and, restore it back. The other complaints we've gotten is just when we shut it down in the fall. We shut it down too early or too late, or vice versa. But overall, we've never had any real land use complaints in there, other than the fact that, like you said, the traffic sometimes gets backed up in there. And the fact that it was too short, this was another complaint.
Subsequent?
Would the dates of usage be the same as they are right now, basically?
Correct. All right, I don't see any other questions or debate on the motion, so all those in favor? Opposed? And it is carried. Number 2. Mayor Poole?
The Standing Committee of Council recommended council that the RV dump station remain a free service for users.
Any debate on that motion? Questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Councilor Taylor, which way are you going? Okay. That's carried unanimously. 6.4, Alberta Council Town Hall Outreach Opportunity.
Thank you. So last week, Mayor Poole and myself received some information from Alberta Council about a service they're assisting municipalities with, and that was in hosting town hall sessions. And it was hoped that this initiative would allow more accessibility and timely release of information, especially through emergency management communications. Administrative staff met with marketing communications following day to discuss the offerings so that we could assist this committee in further discussions tonight. Information provided by Alberta Council was well laid out, and they have provided a sample agenda which is included in the package. The Town Hall, as indicated, provides participation towards a targeted group of stakeholders who must pre-register to engage in discussions. So that was part of the information that we had talked about when we had met, that it really isn't set up for the general public. It's also felt, that it would be a challenge, and we really didn't know what stakeholders we would engage. I mean, definitely Chamber of Commerce and some of those. So it's also noted, should council wish to host a similar event, that we can do it ourselves community-wide on the live stream through YouTube. So we determined through discussion that right now we feel we're doing a good job in our communications. Our website is updated on a regular basis. The Director of Emergency Management is providing regular updates, including council meetings where the public can follow that information that's being provided. Just in summary, the recommendation that we really wouldn't pursue the Alberta Council offer to facilitate town hall outreach due to the fact that it's fashioned to provide dialogue between council and a defined group of stakeholders.
Any questions? Mayor Poole.
I'll move to accept this item for information.
Any debate on that motion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. All right, we have no action correspondence, information, no roundtable, no adoption of minutes, notices of motion. Anybody? No. Great. Business for good of council. Anyone? Councilor Stindy?
I am just curious, actually, if we have our flags at half-mast already. I know that we have a lot of residents who come from Nova Scotia or have family in Nova Scotia, and given the horrific tragedy, I think that we should be paying our respect as a community to the province of Nova Scotia. And I would like all of our residents who have family there or are from there to know that our hearts are with them.
The flags at the Protective Services building are at half-mast as of first thing this morning.
Wonderful, thank you, that's good to know.
Any other business for the good council? All right, we have one short confidential item. Anybody want to move a 5-minute recess? Councilor Bell?
So moved.
And the rest of you will have a good night.
So
We're gonna, emergency.
are we out of